I am so grateful and privileged for those of you who are joining me this evening. Thank you for your time. I have really been enjoying the Knowing Show over the last couple of weeks. A lot of folks have been joining on both YouTube and Instagram specifically. I've got a couple different YouTube channels hooked up here, and it's just been fun engaging with the chat and hearing your questions, hearing what's on your mind. Honestly, hearing what's on your mind is probably the thing that resonates with me the most because so much of this show is just real time processing. It's not some curated or canned answer. It's very, very real time. A lot of what we talk about on the show is um, a lot of times what I'm moving through or processing or going through or meditating on that day. And so hearing from you and hearing what's on your heart and your mind for the day has really been just it's so fun, and it's really rewarding and frankly it's life-giving for me. And so thank you first and foremost for showing up. And I just feel excited heading into 2026. The last week or two, as we've been going live, frankly, pretty late in the day, just because of the holidays and being with family and all the festivities that come with Christmas. And I have found that we're getting really talkative in the evening, and it's just been fun. And with that, also, I've had kind of a mini series that I went through leading up to Christmas, surrounding how do we truly bring to life and activate the power of God in every single one of us. And that really started with the examination of, well, how did Jesus live? How do we manifest ourselves, Christ on earth, just like Jesus did? And I fully believe that every single one of us has this power within. And so over the last couple of days, we've been examining that topic. And then also leading into 2026, we've been studying what does it look like to do hard things? What does it look like to really take control of our minds? And so with that, Len Jr., I just saw you chat put your comment in the chat on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining. Brody, thank you for joining tonight. I'm excited for our conversation. I'm excited for what we have to talk about this evening. And one of the things actually came up today, again, with the fact that so much of this show is live and it is real time based in where I am, both in proximity and also what's just really on my soul. This is what's so fun, y'all. When we start really tapping into, and when I say tapping into, it's like coming to know, be aware of. When we think of the definition of emotional intelligence, it starts with the ability to be aware of one's emotions. And then the next step is to understand it. And then the next step is to express it. And then after we kind of do that whole cycle of awareness, understanding, and expressing one's own emotions, controlling the delivery of it, then we can engage with other people in healthy relationships with wisdom and with empathy. But in order for us to do that, it starts with awareness. And so being aware of what's going on in our lives, taking a daily stock. So as I'm doing this on the Knowing Show, I just invite you to do that and to get into the rhythm with me of every day when we come on the Knowing Show. This is our chance to just take stock of our day. How did we do? Did we live a life today that we're proud of? What's on our mind? What are the questions that we have? And so Aubrey, I just saw you join. Thank you so much for joining this evening. I would love to hear, cool, like Frenzy. I'd love to hear what your relationship question is. Rewind, thank you so much for joining. PNW, I know I don't have y'all's names. Some of it, I just see your handle. So thank you all so much for joining me tonight. Feel free to ask questions as I go through. I'll talk to the camera, but also pay attention to the chat. And I do want to say this too. After the show, I will go through the comments and just take stock of them and create different shows around them. So I'm actually creating a schedule for 2026 and just being really, really intentional around what the topics are going to be and doing mini series. So I really I really wanna be faithful. I wanna be faithful with the time you're giving me and the time I'm giving you to use it so, so, so well. Y'all, I have learned so much. Today is 189 days that I've been going live every single day, and I have learned so much about myself, learned a lot about the world, about God, about ego, about fear, just all the things. I've learned so much. And so it's been a journey. And as I head into 2026, when I think about, 2 days ago, we talked about the topic of what are we doing that's hard? What are we doing that's really pushing us and stretching us? It's like going to the gym. It's not just going to the gym physically, but when we talk about activating and turning online our intelligences, talk about, this is actually kind of where I was going earlier. When we actually learn how to tap into every single one of our intelligences emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, physically, man, we are so alive and we've got so much to capitalize on. So when we are sitting at the end of our day saying, okay, well, how did I live? Because we don't just want to wait till the end of our life to ask that question, how then did I live? It's okay, how did I live today? How did I live in the last 12, 16 hours? Am I proud of who I am? And how do I want to live tomorrow? But we're analyzing those core areas, or those core intelligences emotionally. How did I show up today? Was I consistent? Was I loving? Was I fearful? Was I in shame? Was I actually living in alignment with who I want to be emotionally? What about intellectually? Am I actually thinking my own thoughts, or am I just regurgitating? Am I repeating what everyone else is telling me? Am I living based on old systems, old programs that were given to me that I inherited by my parents, by those that raised me? Or am I truly originating my own thoughts, concepts, dreams, goals, etc.? So IQ, EQ, spiritually, same questions there, honestly. Am I hearing from God? Is God informing me on who I am and my identity and the truth? Or is it kind of this very popular and trendy thought of, well, you have your truth and I have mine? Or am I just really standing strong on something that's steady and a firm foundation so that when the wind blows, when life goes and just gets insane, do I have something to rely on and lean on? And then physical intelligence, am I actually taking care of my body? So, to the analogy of working out and putting in the reps physically to stretch our muscles, to expand them, to grow them, we actually need to do that emotionally, cognitively, spiritually. And so, this is really our time to ask ourselves the hard questions, to work out the muscles, to stretch those and get to the next level for the purpose of not just growth, but also so that we can be fully present here in this moment. When we think about who do we want to be at the end of our lives? Well, man, I want to have lived. And so much of living is through the process of being present every single day. And so how do I be present? Well, it's activating all of those intelligences and turning each one online emotionally, intellectually, physically, so that in that moment today with my family, we celebrated Christmas. Was I thinking 10, 20 minutes from now, or am I actually here in this moment while my little baby nephew is slowly pulling that edge of paper and pulls it away, and it takes about 5 minutes to open a present, and it just takes so long. Am I present here in this moment? Or am I thinking about the past, or am I thinking about the future? And in being truly present, it's man, we just come to be fully alive. And it's for the purpose of, again, kind of activating all parts of us. Tonight we watched The Christmas Carol about I don't know if you know the story, but Charles Dickens wrote this book, A Christmas Carol, and it's about the character Ebenezer Scrooge, and he's a very successful businessman, and he goes through this process of being visited by a ghost, Jacob Marley, and it's his old business partner. And so his business partner had died 7 years ago, and he comes and visits him, and he's a ghost, and he's got this long, long chain of like almost like these boxes that have money in them. And he's like, "Man, Jacob, like what's up, dude? You're a ghost. Like, what's happening? And why do you have all these chains around you?" So Ebenezer Scrooge is asking this question to his business partner, and his business partner is like, "I lived all of my life solely for the purpose of making money, and I was constantly thinking about the future. I didn't care about the fellow man around me. I was living solely for myself, and I never thought about love. I never thought about integrity. I never thought about relationship. And for that purpose, and this is the point of the story, is that he kind of has to do penance before he can be free of the chains of the past. And so he's telling Ebenezer Scrooge, you need to wake up. You need to realize that money is not the end all be all. Relationships matter so much, and love matters, and the present moment life, like to truly live, there's so much joy and beauty here. And then after uh, his partner, the ghost, leaves, he's visited by three spirits: the past, the present, and the future. And for those of you who have been joining me on the Knowing Show over the last couple of months or 180 days since I started going live, we talk a lot about understanding the past, present, and future, because for so many of us, we're either living tied to the past or living solely for the future, and we're not here in this moment. We're not really able to be fully alive here because a part of us is back there or a part of us is up ahead. And so for us to be really, really present on the other side of learning how to do that is so much joy, is freedom from the past, and also freedom from anxiety for the future. Because everything that we haven't resolved in the past, we project on the future. And of course, we're going to be anxious. We're afraid that we're going to repeat history. We're afraid that all those things that we haven't worked through in the past are going to happen again. So even if we suppress it, it doesn't mean that it's gone away. It's still in us, it's still in our minds. And so, before I keep going, because tonight, frankly, what we're going to be talking about is, what do we think about? What occupies our mind? What are we giving real estate to in relation to our thoughts, in relation to our spirit, our soul? We're talking about each one of these intelligences. Well, what is filling up and occupying each one of these intelligences? So before I jump into that, I just want to jump over to the chat here, um, and just do a quick check-in. Uh, Malt Lucky, you said, what topics are fair game for this podcast? We really talk about emotional health, emotional intelligence, for a couple of reasons. I really kind of woke up to this actually when my husband left me 4 years ago, and I was so, man, the talk about the floor of your life falling out from under you, and just everything comes crashing down. That's what happened to me, and so much of what I experienced was kind of because of the fact that I hadn't cultivated emotional intelligence, and neither had my former husband. And so we just ended up repeating the past, repeating history, and it was really devastating. So that's part of my mission now in life. So emotional intelligence, intellectual intelligence, artificial intelligence, how do we actually amplify? A lot of what I talk about when I say amplify business, but also just amplify our lives in general for the greater good of our families and our communities using artificial intelligence. A friend of mine, she's homeschooling her three boys, and she has been able to customize the homeschooling experience for every single one based on their personality, based on who they are, what they like, don't like. And so now she's curated a program for them through artificial intelligence. So there's a lot of free reign here. What I will say, though, is I really want, man, when I talk about my mission is that every single one of us grows to be healthier than we were at the beginning of this show. And there's only so much you and I can do. There's so much personal responsibility that comes from your end and my end in terms of being responsible to be authentic, being responsible to focus our attentions kind of in the right direction, and moving how I feel led, but also that we're going to take time to do the work. This is not the place where we talk about hypotheticals. It's the place where we talk about real life action and putting the work into practice. I firmly believe that every single one of us has the power to enact healing for ourselves. I bought the domain a couple years ago, Healing on Your Own, because I've done it, I've experienced it, and I'm continuing to do it. And you too. It's not, that's not a special talent for a certain person. It's every single one of us has actually what we need to heal, but we don't know how. We're not taught how to be emotionally intelligent. We're taught how to be intellectually intelligent. We're taught that from 4 years old and onward in school. We're taught the ABCs, how to spell, how to read. We're taught so many different techniques and aspects of cognitive reasoning and intellectual intelligence, but not around how to do relationships, how to know who we are, and how to really activate our full potential within us, pulling especially, and my brother and I were actually talking about this today because we celebrated family Christmas today. He was talking about effectively activating our full breadth of what he's talking about unconscious and conscious thinking. Honestly, it gets almost like technical at that point to even use those words. But I will say, for the purpose of this conversation and what's the goal of this podcast, it's like, man, how do we really bring everything that's subconscious into conscious awareness so that we're not caught by surprise, so that we live a life that we're proud of, so that we live a life that we're proud of with intention and by intelligent design? So bringing all of our intelligences online, activated and alive, and then designing the life that we want, designing the life that we're called to based on who we were created to be in the first place. So I hope that answers your question. Daniel, thank you so much for joining. Gabriel, thank you for coming on. Aubrey, I'm so glad to see you. Lender Jr., thank you again for being on here. All right, so I will go ahead and just jump into this whole concept of what do we think about, y'all, the mind, and being able to be aware of what are we thinking about. And this is a great time to just take a quick audit. If I was to close my eyes just for a moment, I actually invite you to do this with me if you're willing. If you and I were to take an audit of what we thought about today, what are those things? All right, today it was kind of like a fake Christmas with my family, and we did it after the fact. Obviously, it's not Christmas today, but we celebrated Christmas. My two brothers flew in, with one of them with their family, the other one, his girls were sick, and so he didn't come. But there were 13 of us in the house, and um, I spent a lot of time thinking about, honestly, my family. Um, I thought actually about the show a couple of times, thinking about what would we talk about, and uh, I spent a lot of time being actually really, really present, and so I'm really grateful for that. But when um, my mind wandered. This is actually where this is interesting. And so this is part of you and me doing this audit. So where does your mind wander? Where does mine? Mine wanders when I'm with my family. It wanders to a different place than it wanders to when I'm alone. So where it wanders with my family is I'm actually wondering if everyone's having a good time. I'm wondering if I'm being too loud. That's something I wonder about. I wander to the place of missing my former brother-in-law who was killed by a drunk driver. I wander to the point of, yeah, just really hoping everyone's having a good time. So what each one of those aspects means is that it's pulling me out of this present moment. It also shows me that I have remnants. I have pieces left over in my mental faculties, in my mind, around areas that frankly I've really tried to heal from over the last couple of years. And when I say heal, it's not like there was any trauma related to this per se, but I had a habit and a program around my worth in the family was intrinsically tied for myself to what I did. And so if I'm sitting on the couch and I know my mom's in the kitchen with one of my sisters, it subconsciously in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I should get off my butt and I'm being lazy. I need to go in there. And so that's actually a narrative that it's like, okay, now let me pull that into consciousness as I do an audit of my day of where did my mind go? I still have that narrative running. And so I have to be so conscientious and so aware to pull that thought from my subconscious into my consciousness and say, okay, let me examine this narrative. This is not helping me. This is actually not for me. This is not true. And so, in that process of identifying what's not true, we effectively are able to then become free from it. But we can't be free from a narrative that's not true until we focus on what is true. And so in this process, using this as an example, because frankly, I really codependency is something I've really struggled with throughout my entire life. I struggled with it in my marriage. I struggled with it and still do threaten to struggle with codependency with my family, where my worth and my value in the family is tied directly to what I do. And what I do, this is what I think and have thought, what I do impacts how everyone else is feeling. So if I'm doing the right thing, everyone else is going to be happy. If I'm not doing the right thing, they're not going to be happy. So there's this direct correlation with my actions and their well being. And man, isn't that so much responsibility for us to bear? And so when you and I do this audit of how and where is my mental real estate being spent, probably a lot of it is being spent in different narratives that we learned when we were kids. And so until we pull those narratives into our consciousness, then we can address them. But we can't actually truly be free from them until we put something new in its place. There's a wonderful book called As a Man Thinketh. And what he talks about is he likens the mind to a garden. And so if we're going to be pulling out these weeds of old narratives, we can't just leave the garden empty. We actually have to plant new seeds. We have to plant new flowers and new narratives that frankly are going to take the place of the old. Otherwise, we cannot help but go back to what we know. So, if we're going to unlearn something, we have to learn something new with so much intention because it's going to be so hard otherwise to try to see any kind of real, not even just change, but like a new direction, a new target, a new ideal, something different, something better. When we think about the things that our parents have given us, there's a lot, I hope, that we want to keep, but there's also a lot that we want to change. Every single one of us, and we should. Our parents lived in a completely different world than we do now. And so, just like our children will have to learn this, they'll have to change how they engage with the world, and we have to too. But it's going to be so incredibly hard to do that if we're not doing so with intention, with planned and strategic action of how am I going to be different than how I was raised to be because the world I exist in is different. I am different. I'm an adult now versus being a child. The old narratives are not going to serve me anymore. A lot of them, some of them might, but I need to examine the narratives that control my behaviors. What are the core beliefs that I have that turn into narratives about me, the world, God, other people that indicate and dictate the behaviors? Every single behavior is rooted in a belief. And until we take the time to trace all the way down from the start, okay, why did I behave that way? Trace all the way down to the root belief. Only then will we come to know, okay, that belief is what needs to change. Yes, I want to change the behavior, but the belief itself is what needs to change. Otherwise, we're just pulling a whole bunch of weeds in the garden, but we're not actually getting to the root of the weed. And then we're also not putting something in its place. So when we're thinking about real change on a cognitive, intellectual level, but also emotional level, we can't change one without changing the other. We can't try to change how we feel without changing how we think. And so both have to work together. We cannot, guys, we cannot live divided in ourselves. It's like when you encounter somebody and it's almost like, are you bipolar? Because they're divorcing intellect from emotion. And for so long as we're trying to do that and we're not considering the fact that we are a whole human, which is equal parts of intellect and emotion, and then add in other layers if we want to, but just at the basic core level, emotion and intellect. And we have to honor both and give weight to both. And for so long, I really only looked at the intellect because that's what's honored in our education system. I was never trained emotional intelligence. I was never trained on tools to engage in relationship. And so, in order for us to ever see any real change, it's so important for us to start with an audit of what do you think about? Because those thoughts ultimately are the very things that lend to the behaviors that we have in our life. And so you can kind of start in two different ways. Do an audit of what do you think about, what occupies your mental real estate, and then analyze, okay, then next, how does that manifest into our behaviors? Or we can look at our behaviors and trace the route all the way down. So, an example of that for me, honestly, I was boarding a plane 3 years ago, and it was that queue, that line of everybody putting their luggage up above or under the seat, and then stepping into their aisle and into their seat. And when it came to be my turn, everybody else had all the time in the world. No problem. Take your time. No big deal. But then when it was my turn, I just felt this all of a sudden this like anxious rush to be quick, be out of the way. I'm in everyone's hair. I need to get out of here as fast as possible. And I like had this out of body experience where I was watching the behavior and I was like, what is happening, Christine? Like, why are you rushing? Everyone else had all the time in the world. Like, calm down, stop being anxious. So I sat down in my seat and I actually pulled out, I had a physical journal at the time, and I took the behavior. I said, okay, I rushed. I didn't give myself any time. Everyone else I gave a lot of time to. So it's okay. Okay, how am I engaging with myself? How am I engaging with my environment to analyze my behavior? And then why? And just really leaning into that question of why. Why do I not give myself time? Why do I not allow myself the same courtesy that I give everyone else? And as I sat with that question, I realized, man, I have a fundamental self-worth issue. There is a core belief that I have around me not holding the same value and almost like equity. And to talk about real estate in that plane, I had less of a place in the map as everyone else. And so therefore I needed to be smaller, become obsequious, hide, shrink, play it small. And y'all, that is probably one of the most damaging narratives that I've seen over and over and over again for myself and for others that I talk to and work with. It's my gosh, is the whole thing of I need to become small because I'm afraid of what will happen if I take up space. Or if I take up space, other people won't like me. There's fear there. There's fear and there's shame, and there's so many narratives from our childhood that is present when we think about actually taking up real estate and real space in our environment. And our behaviors, man, are they a mirror of deep-seated beliefs. And those beliefs were formed at a moment in time in our childhood. So that's why we have to go back to the past to really understand the present. Why am I showing up here the way that I am? So I'm gonna just take a quick break, and just take a look here at the chat. Um, so Lender Jr., thank you so much. Len Jr., thank you for jumping in here. I really appreciate you. Um, okay, so let me keep going. I with this whole concept of what's taking up our mind and mental real estate, y'all, there is something really powerful when we start to choose our belief system, when we start to choose how we want to show up, what do we want our behavior to be? Because that's really the next question. It's okay, well, let me do this analysis. How am I showing up? What are the narratives that take up my mental real estate? What am I thinking about? And then what does the behavior indicate about a deeper belief? But now that I've done this work, now that I've done this audit, well, what do I actually want? How do I want to show up emotionally? How do I want to show up emotionally just for myself? And then once we've really outlined that, then we can think about, well, how do I want to show up for other people that I'm close to? How do I want to show up for my family? And asking myself this question was actually so helpful because I realized back in October, I really started analyzing, well, how do I want my relationship to look like with my dad? And then what do I want my relationship to look like with my mom? Two very different relationships. And so as I was analyzing both, I realized, I actually really want to invest in them because I don't know how long I have. Hopefully a while, but I don't know. And so I want to be intentional and live life on purpose rather than on accident. And so a week later, I was on a flight to Rome to go join them on a cruise that they were going on. They had invited me 9 months earlier, and I just wasn't sure. And I kind of had waffled back and forth. And so, because I started being intentional, considering what do I want in my relationship with my parents, it informed action. And so, as we're really doing an analysis over, well, who do I want to be Then we go back to our behaviors and beliefs. All right, well, what needs to change? A belief or a behavior in order to get to my ideal, in order to get to achieving what I want? Because man, we might be really far off from that. And so as we're analyzing what am I thinking about, so much of what we think about is what ends up happening. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but man, I have had so many times where I'm thinking about someone and then they shoot me a text, or I think about a project and then that happens to be the next project we get for work. And it's like, oh, that's ironic. Oh, that's so serendipitous, or that's strange. But there's something about, man, what we're meditating on, what we're really spending emotional and mental energy on, that is probably what's going to be what we end up experiencing in our life. We have so much control. Viktor Frankl, I love this man. God bless him, man. He was a psychiatrist who was in the German concentration camps in World War II, and he authored this book called A Man's Search for Meaning. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it. It's really hard to read, but he wrote this book and it was so good. And he talks about how he was in this concentration camp. Everything was stripped from him, his wife, human liberty. He's literally wondering when he's going to go into the gas chambers and die. But he has this quote and he says, to the point of, they can strip and take everything from me, but they cannot take the human freedom of choice. And so we have so much power to choose what we think about. Today, I asked my dad to lead our family Christmas breakfast, and create have a prompt or a question or something that everyone can go around and answer. And so he asked the question. He said, I want you guys to share one thing you love most about your partner or your sibling that nobody else knows. And it was, I mean, we spent 2 hours. Now, granted, there's 13 of us, but we spent 2 hours just encouraging each other. And one of my sisters cried. My niece cried. She went around and just said how much she loved every single one of us. She's 11 years old. And man, I'm getting chills even now thinking about it. Y'all, what is occupying our mind? Are we thinking about just what a gift and a blessing our parents are? What a gift and a blessing our partner is? I had this realization in October of last year. Gratitude is the antidote. If I focus on gratitude, what I'm so grateful for, man, does all of a sudden everything change. All of a sudden, it's like what was once black and white, what was once dull and colorless, all of a sudden, there's so much vibrancy of color and life there. Because if I'm fixating on that which is good and beautiful and gives me life, man, that's my input. So just like with a computer, you've got an input and then you've got an output, and that's AI for you. We put the input, we give the prompt, and then they give the response. And so we have to consider, well, what's our input to then inform our response? How do I want to live? How do I want the response to look like? What do I want the output to be? Okay, well, then let's put in a really good prompt. Let's give a really, really good input. And so our mornings is such a good opportunity to give ourselves our own prompt, to give ourselves our own input. I just saw, Willie, on Instagram, you said energy and thoughts are power, which is why positive beliefs are so important. And then you just asked this question, what are your thoughts on, and your, wait, what are your thoughts on uh, your life that does not show gratitude? Um, I'm not sure exactly what you mean there. If you can just rephrase it, but I like where you're going with this. So I just want to make sure that I fully understand your question before I answer it. But to your original point, you said energy and thoughts are power, which is why positive beliefs are so important. So I love this. And I'm so grateful you said that, Willie, because y'all, if we're really, this is where the whole thing of what are you thinking about? What are you spending your time on? What are the narratives? Y'all, if we are fixated on negative news, if our, y'all get this, if the second I pick up my phone and I open Facebook or I open Instagram or TikTok, whatever your vice of choice is, if we open it and the second we open the application, we see bad news, we see people that we find ourselves comparing with ourselves with. How in the world could we ever maintain that kind of positive joy that we all say we want? How can we maintain peace? How can we maintain contentment? How can we maintain presence? And so it requires radical action if we're serious. This is why it's really look in the mirror for you and me. I need to do this on a daily basis. If my behaviors are not aligning with my beliefs, and either one of those is not aligning with who I say I want to be, then I got to make some real change. So either I need to change what I say I want, or I need to change a belief or a behavior. Something's got to go if there's incongruency. And what's so exciting about this is that we have so much power. We have so much potential to bring about real change. Willie, you just said, what are your thoughts on those people in your life that do not show gratitude? I'm so grateful you asked this because, man, isn't there something about us making a choice over who we want to be and how we want to live, but then let's say our partner is not of the same belief system, and it's like we got married at 25 years old. Let's say I was one person, they're another, and at 40 we're completely different than that 25-year-old self. Or maybe they're actually the same person they were at 25 and we're completely different at 40. And this honestly probably warrants an entire conversation in and of itself, but my gosh, I've experienced the disconnect in that before, and it's so hard because we're changing at different speeds. We're changing in different ways, and it's like, man, how do you maintain connection and even congruency? It's almost like there's a text that says, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." And so, man, if me and my partner we're doing life together and we're at a core level divided, it's going to be impossible for us to be successful. That doesn't mean we can't be, but something needs to change. Again, going back to change, something has to give, a belief or a behavior, or we need to be radically honest about, okay, what I'm saying I want isn't actually what I want because I'm not willing to change a belief or a behavior. So, with those folks in our life who are not expressing gratitude, y'all, I have experienced this firsthand this year. This has been so important. And I've experienced it both in moments where I'm not being grateful or in moments when the person I'm with is not being grateful. Actually, just the other day, I was at a friend's house and they started talking about the negative news that they were seeing on their phones and in the news, in the media outlets. And they were going on and on about just how much bad news there was. And it was almost like just like on a downward slope. And I just realized, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. So, to the point of the definition of emotional intelligence, we have to become aware of it, we have to understand it, and then we have to express it. So, in that process, it was like, okay, I am being aware of what's going on. We're all kind of collectively going in this downward spiral because they were the ones dictating the conversation. And then, okay, I understand why this is happening. They're actually afraid. And I also realized that if I want to bring about real change, I actually have the power to do that. And so I offered literally a question that pulled all of them. There were 5 different people, and all of them reoriented their focus. And immediately it almost like lifted us back up. It was like we were going down, down, down. And then with the change of topic, it all of a sudden started bringing us back up. So, one, we have the power to choose what it is that we talk about. In addition, yes, our internal world and our inner world is so important for us to master and us to control. But our external world, what are we going to engage with? I set up actually a boundary, and this is where boundaries are actually really life-giving for us and protect us. Having a boundary around not gossiping is something that is so important to me. I really, man, this is so important. I was on the phone with a friend the other day, and something had just happened for me, and I said, "Oh, you know what? Let me call you right back. Someone's calling me. I gotta take this call. They said it's urgent." I call her back right after, and she said, "Hey, what was going on there?" And like, "Is everything okay?" And I started sharing. I was like, "Yeah, they're going through this thing with their boyfriend," and I started sharing. And as I was sharing, I was like, "I think I'm gossiping," and so I changed the subject. But after I hung up, I realized, man, I did not act in accordance with my values. I was bringing down the energy in the room by gossiping. Gossiping, being negative, all of that kind of diminishes the energy of the conversation, of being joyful and causing peace. Like, we get to create the atmosphere in our homes, in our lives. And so, if I want to be creating an atmosphere that's life-giving for myself and for other people, I have to be so careful with what I talk about, and that's always a reflection of what I'm thinking about. So I ended up, about an hour later, I called my friend back and I just said, I'm really sorry. I know it didn't seem like gossiping. And because she was like, I actually don't think you gossiped, but I was like, I felt like I crossed my own boundary. And so I just wanted to apologize. And I actually would love for you to help me hold this standard of not gossiping. So, for those in our lives who do not, perhaps, one, they have to know our values. Two, we have to communicate them in a way that is effectively allowing for them to contribute to us maintaining the boundary. So communicate what it is that's our value, communicate what we want the boundary to be, and then two, invite them to join us. Like, would you help me maintain this value? I want to be grateful. I want to speak positively. I don't want to gossip. So those are opportunities to communicate the value, but then also communicate the boundary. So here's why this matters. And then this is what it looks like in practice and in practical application. Um, I just saw a meta lecture. You said true love is wanting the absolute best for someone, regardless of ego or personal gain. I love that. And isn't that the truth? I mean, honestly, if that's what we want for other people we're in relationship with, okay, well, then what are the external behaviors that are going to be the manifestation of having that inner desire? And y'all, there's a big difference between truly loving someone and seeking to control them. And frankly, I didn't know the difference. And so I know we're coming up on time here. I'm mindful of the time of day as well. For me, it's 1:14 a.m. So I need to go to bed. But that's a really, really just good question for each one of us. Am I seeking to love, or am I seeking to control? And then I just saw down here, you said, what reframing questions did you ask your friends, if you remember? Um, oh, yeah, I do. Okay, so when I was at dinner with my friends, they were talking about different things that were happening in the news and what was super negative. And then I said, I'm actually so I wanted to ask you guys a question. This is how I positioned it. I wanted to ask you guys a question. I'm actually taking time this weekend, which I was, to plan out my 2026. And I'm just wondering, like, what books have you guys read this year that were really meaningful to you or impactful that I should add to my reading list? And honestly, it was the first thing that came to me kind of on the fly. But it was funny, it just immediately changed the environment. Here's something that man, when I realized this, I feel like my life changed in a very real way. I realized that you and I, man, is it so easy to blame our parents for the environment that we grew up in. Y'all, you and I are in control of the environment that we exist in today. We are the ones now to blame for what we don't like about our lives in so many ways. We can create the environment. I know so many people, every single good entrepreneurial billionaire story, for the most part, they started out with nothing and they created this empire, having gone through this major transformation. If they can do it coming from literally nothing, then we can. And so for us, it's okay, well, what do I want my life to look like? How do I want it to feel? How do I want it to be? Willie, I just saw you say on Instagram, yes, oh, I love this. Awareness, understanding, and expression. Creating an atmosphere and environment of life giving is a sweet standard and value to have and share. I love that. Oh, yes. I mean, y'all, that's it. What's life giving for me? And then how do I bring literally giving life to every single person I encounter? Y'all, we get the opportunity to do that. That the second somebody passes into our home, the second they come onto our Instagram, Facebook page, the second they read and open our email, we have power and opportunity every single day, multiple times a day, to bring life to people. And that's where it's super empowering when we realize that, and also super empowering when we activate on it. But first, we have to be aware of it, and then understanding what is getting in the way. I had this moment yesterday, actually. I was on the phone with a friend of mine, and they happened to mention something to me that I was like, "Oh, I didn't know you were gonna do that," and frankly, it was a little bit I just felt a little funny, and it was just almost like this little tiff, like a very small thing. They were like, "I'm sorry you didn't know." And then we hang up, and I'm going to my family Christmas. And then I go back to message them later, and I had this moment where I actually forgot that we had the little tiff because I was in such a good mood, and it was such a wonderful day. And I had this moment where I remembered, not that we were fighting, but just like, "Oh, we were kind of at odds with each other." And I had this moment and I was like, "Well, what do I choose? What mood do I want to be in right now?" And I was like, "I want to be in a good mood." And so I was like, "Can I forgive?" The reality is, can I actually forgive in that moment? And it's not even like they did anything wrong, but effectively, can I let them go? Can I free them, free myself to then move forward into the next 5 minutes, you know, conversation? And that's really empowering. We have the choice over how we show up. And that's what I mean by life giving, is that we get to give ourselves life and we get to give other people life. But we have to be aware of the environment and the atmosphere that we want to create, what's potentially blocking us and getting in the way. And then knowing, is there a belief that needs to change or a behavior at the root of it? Um, I just saw on YouTube, 𝐸𝐴𝐚𝐢 said, "My family makes me feel guilty all the time about everything." Man, I it's funny, as I'm still going through my process of really coming to know myself and really change some of those old behaviors, belief systems. Um, it's so easy for me to default with family. And I found that I had so many old behaviors with my family that, frankly, so many of them I assigned to myself at 7, 8, 9 years old, or they assigned to me and they have since changed. And sometimes, like, there's real moments where it's like, "Man, my parents have never changed and they're the exact same people as they were 40 years ago." Maybe, but here's what I've found is that as I'm changing, as I communicate my values, communicate my why, and as I communicate the action that I want to start taking, it forces everyone else to rise up with me. And as my siblings are doing that, it forces everyone to rise up with them. And my mom now is starting to really change. And I find myself after many, many years, man, she's forcing me to rise up in certain ways. And man, is that like a miracle? So there's such a real element of, it's actually hardest when we're with family because that's where we built all those programs to begin with in so many cases. So of course it's going to be hardest with them. And so as we're doing an audit of, okay, what fills my mental space, it's a question of, okay, yeah, what did I spend my time thinking about today? Do that audit. But what ends up happening? Who do I become when I'm with my family and when I'm not with my family? What does it look like physically manifested when I'm truly giving myself life, when I'm really in the atmosphere that I've created in alignment with my values, where my beliefs and my behaviors are aligned? What does that look like, feel like, sound like? Okay, let me go habituate that. Let me go practice that. Let me go learn how to be that person at a core level. Y'all, when my husband left, I really took time away from family for about 2 years. And I just needed to learn. I needed to like take everything off the table. I needed to die. I needed to have that death and rebirth process. And I'm continuing now. I'm realizing, okay, it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing death and rebirth process, which is exciting because thank God, otherwise we'd be super bored once we come to know who we are and we're like finished. What's the point of living if we figured it all out? But for that time specifically, where it was like very drastic, really seeking to bring real change, I actually did take some time and space of just being alone. And today I was with my family for the majority of the day, and I took and even still, we had a wonderful, wonderful time. My sister today commented on how our relationship has changed so much in the last year as we both have grown and really come to be in unity with each other. And our relationship now is rooted in love. It's not rooted in fear. And that changes everything. And even still, even with such a wonderful day, I still needed to take time to just be alone. Y'all, being alone and honoring, knowing what we need, being aware of it, understanding it and then giving ourselves taking action accordingly, it's our boundary, it's our protection. It keeps us safe as we seek to bring life to everyone around us, but we have to have life to give to begin with. Willie, I just saw your comment. You said, "When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change." I love that. I could not agree more. I'm taking a screenshot of your message because that's just so beautiful. I really, really love that. Um, Maxwell, I just saw you say, or Metal X, I'm sorry. That's the power of forgiveness and awareness in real time. I love that. And then you said, a very well known teacher once said, if you think you're enlightened, spend time with your family. Oh my gosh. Isn't that the freaking truth? It's so humbling. It's so humbling. And also, it's so humbling, and it's like, I feel like it warrants actually, someone said this yesterday to me, it warrants so much compassion at the same time of, like, remembering, "Wow, like, look how far I've come." There's also a lot of, compassion for ourselves, but then also some celebration. Y'all, for all of us, we should be standing on the shoulders of the foundation from which we came. I hope and pray my kids are so much more advanced than that's how it should be, right? And so it almost like makes sense that we might be further ahead in certain ways than our parents are. I think that's what they want for us. But if realizing that is upsetting, that's where it's like, well, actually, maybe we've gotten it all wrong, thinking and expecting for perfect people to raise us. And so I love that quote. It's so true. My family is such a mirror for me. I found myself even just this week, and I told my mom this. I was like, Mom, the ways that I want you to grow in, I actually need to grow in that way too. Like, you're a mirror for me. The things that trigger me or that upset me, they're pretty much the exact same way and reason why I need to change in that very same way. It just looks a little bit different. Um, so anyways, I just appreciated you saying that because it's so true. Our family is a mirror in so many ways. Y'all, thank you so much for joining me tonight on the Knowing Show. I'm gonna go to sleep, and hopefully I will see you tomorrow on the Knowing Show. And as always, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. Um, I'm actually this week I've been pretty home based with my family and off social media, but feel free to send me a note. I'd love to hear questions that you have. And so in the meantime, I hope you sleep